Welcome, friends. Joseph Varghese here. I'm here with my good friend, Lori Somekh. Lori and I go back several years. She's a neighbor, a friend. She's a New Yorker, fellow New Yorker. She's been a member of my community success circles before as well. I'm excited to have her on our podcast. Our podcast is on rulesforsuccess.com. Once again, rulesforsuccess.com. You'll find a summary of this whole conversation, this interview, a mind map with Lori as well, also about her business, her passions, her mission, what she's up to in the world. And what she's going to share is really critical. It's really important. And I just found having elder parents. My mom is 88. My wife's mom is in her 70s. Some of my clients, their parents have dementia. Some of my clients, also people in our community, happen to be whether they're Gen X like I am or baby boomers. These are important. This is an important conversation because this is about making sure that the people around you are protected, they're taken care of, whether it's having the right trust, whether it's ensuring that they have the right Medicaid strategy for themselves. What Lori provides is extraordinary. It's important. One something I've learned too is that it's important to get these things managed early on versus waiting until later, especially if you have
Mm,
parents who are older and elderly, and you don't want to wait till it's too late. And she's given me some feedback over the past couple of years that have changed how we navigate with our parents. And I know for our audience out there listening, you'll get tremendous value in what she's offering as well, also in terms of her program, her book that exists. Well, without further ado, okay, welcome Lori Somekh from the NY Elder Law Group. How are you, Lori?
thank you. I'm great. How are you?
I'm fantastic, Lori. I'm fantastic. It's great to have you. I just
Thank
think
you.
every conversation we've had before is vital. I know you also impacted members of my community before in the past. And a podcast is a great way of really bringing you to a wider audience and giving people access to your wisdom, your book. I mean, I found that it's a bit challenging in the space finding somebody who is competent and is extraordinary with the wealth of wisdom that you have, specifically in the
Oh,
elder care space, right?
thank
And
you.
you bring that forward. I'm curious. So you've been practicing as a lawyer for 30 plus years. How long have you been in this elder care space? And also, please give our audience a bit of your background too, as well. It's like what brought you in this journey and what gives you the passion, the drive to really help people dealing with this now.
Okay, so I've been in this space for most of my career, not 100% of it, but most of it. It's going on 3 decades. And I want to make the reason I have kind of a passion, I want to make legal information available to everybody at a relatively low cost. Um, Over my decades of practicing, I've noticed that people come to a lawyer when they're already in trouble. It's kind of like I do with a dentist. I don't, I'm afraid of the dentist. I don't like going to the dentist. So I go only when I'm in terrible pain, and then it's a root canal. And it's expensive. And that whole experience kind of reinforces why I don't go to the dentist in the first place. Uh, the same with lawyers. People When people come to us when they're already in trouble, it tends to be a costly proposition because now there's some serious stuff that we have to take care of. And that kind of reinforces how they feel about going to a lawyer or reaching out to a lawyer. It's not an enjoyable thing for them. So what I what I what I'm trying to do is get the information out to people before they need it. There are some basic things that everybody can do to protect themselves legally. And when we don't have some of these things in place, like my typical situation is I do a lot of emergency planning. So people come to me, they find their way to me when mom had a stroke
Yes.
and she's on her way into a rehab, and she, at the moment anyway, doesn't have capacity, so she can't do her own bidding. So what the families realize at that point is, oh no, how do I access mom's accounts? And oops, mom has a lot of assets in her name. And when it comes to long-term care, like in a rehab or getting home health aides in the house around the clock, for instance, that is not covered by Medicare or any other primary insurance. So what we're in a position of having to do at that point is get someone broke so that they can avail themselves of the Medicaid program, because if they are private paying, which is the only other option, it is literally a fortune. It could be a bankrupting situation. And let's say, okay, mom had a stroke, she needs this care, but dad's still living in the house. I mean, is dad supposed to sell the house and move in with one of his kids in order to pay the bills to get mom the long-term care she needs? That's the situation people could find themselves in.
Yes, it's a very challenging situation, and it's one that I'm familiar with myself, and also have seen many clients go through as well, also where they potentially lose everything, have to go bankrupt because it's a situation where they didn't have power of attorney in those situations, or I know there's a like a 5-year lookup process too in some of these situations where they look back, and we talked about that a couple of years ago, and we talked about some of the circumstances that I've been dealing with, some of my clients deal with.
Mhm, mhm.
So it's really planning powerfully, like planning well, and it doesn't have to be difficult at all, but it's just basically having the knowledge that's there. And certain states have different rules, as you mentioned, you told
Right,
me in the past as well,
right,
also.
right. And New York is one of the better states. I mean, the 5-year look back period, every state has that for nursing home Medicaid. So what you want is, once it's time to apply for nursing home, if that is what you have to do. I know it's not most people's first plan, but you want to have done your planning 5 years ago.
Yes,
And we need a little bit of a crystal ball for that. But the older we get, the probability is we're getting closer and closer to that
yes.
being a possibility. So, we want to start doing our planning.
You've given me some great feedback in the past. I mean, my parents were pretty wise in some sense. 25, 30 years ago, they had a
Mhm,
trust put together, and at the time
mhm,
it was a revocable trust that they created, right? And then you and I have spoken about that as well. And then my dad passed away 20 years ago, 2004, of a stroke. My mom is still alive. She's doing fairly well, but she's at that age now. And you made it a point that it's important to have that conversation with the parent and have a power of attorney. And if things do go awry and we have to put her into a situation where she needs to get care through Medicare, and we pray we don't, because we love our mom and we want to take care of her. But at some point, sometimes it might be useful to have more resources there. And it's possible, and you've shared this with me before, like unless we take those steps, making that trust a revocable trust and going through those steps, then all of those assets can be lost. And when it comes down to planning and supporting her in those later years where we're at now, it can be very challenging. And you gave us a whole step-by-step process that was very useful for me and my sister to learn. And we're going to be working with you to kind of get your guidance even further. What are some of the challenges you've seen? Like, what else have you seen? What are like the worst case, and what's the best case scenario you would say you've seen here in New York? Is it like people planning in the 30s and 40s for this, or is it like what does that look like for yourself? I'm
You
curious.
know what? So let's go through the continuum.
Hmm.
At any age after 18, you want to have a power of attorney, because, and you want, if you have 18-year-old or older kids, you want them to have a power of attorney, because if, let's say you get in an accident, I mean, God forbid, but if there's a car accident and the young person is unconscious, nobody can do anything with their assets unless they've given them the authority to do so with the power of attorney. And the power of attorney that we want is a power of attorney that authorizes someone to take things out of our name. Because if the young person needs to spend some time in the rehab, their insure well, a young person doesn't have Medicare, so their insurance will decide how much of that they will cover. And the answer is not much.
Hmm.
So you want to have somebody who's able to act on that person's behalf and remove assets from their name potentially. Um, as we get a little older, and we accumulate more assets, we want to think about how are we holding our assets. Now in New York, we're very lucky because and our luck is running low. But right now, for the Medicaid home care program, which is, let's say, round the clock aides in the home taking care of mom, we don't have any look back period for that right now. So if something happened to mom and all of a sudden, you know, call it a stroke, that's always my example, but it
Yes.
could be anything, but call it a stroke, and she can no longer take care of herself in the home, we can get the assets out of her name right away, and we could get home health aides paid for by Medicaid in the home. Now, we can apply right away. It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight, even in the best case scenario, but we can still do that. That there is a new law in place. They have put a look back period in for home care, and it's 2.5 years. But because of the timing and the way they did it, which was really sloppy, um, they have not been able to implement it yet. And it's not going to be implemented until, I believe, June of next year at the earliest.
Wow.
So, once that does kick in, we're going to have planned ahead, even if we want to get home care in place.
Right.
So,
Yes.
getting assets kind of out of our seniors' names is a pretty good idea. And, you know, I have kind of a rule of thumb for when we want to start doing that, assuming all things are equal and we're relatively healthy, mid 60s is not a bad time to do it.
Yes. Yes.
Um, Plenty of people are healthy well into their 80s, and some people are unhealthy in their 60s. So, it's
Yes.
an individual thing, but we do want to start thinking about that
Yes.
um,
And
the older we get.
I had 5 friends last year who passed away in their 50s. So like anything is possible, and health crises and accidents, and one person drowned, and two of my friends,
Oh, no.
three people I know had heart attack. And it's sometimes it's the unpredictable. You live in New York City, you're in a bike, and I mean all these crazy things happen. And it's
Yeah,
basically doing the planning, having the conversation, being educated on the options, and even having a will. My wife and I have a will together, but a will sometimes is not enough. Actually going the extra step and having a trust written out can be very impactful, although because wills, there's a probate process and there's a cost for the probate process too as well. And all it is basically 2 or 3 steps, a small investment to have this written out. My parents did it 30 years ago, um, and sometimes these things have to be reviewed and so forth.
100%, 100%. And even if we've done your planning, even if we've done your trust and your advanced directives, which is the power of attorney and the healthcare proxy, you still want to review it every few years because, did one of my beneficiaries pass away? Has my spouse taken ill, and do I not want her to be, you know, getting anything from me when I die because she might be on benefits? Or, yeah, we always want to be
Yes.
reviewing our documents. And we also want to review our beneficiary designations because they have a way of evaporating somehow from our
Yes.
bank accounts. I've had that happen. I was sitting with a beneficiary designation in my hand for a client who had passed away, and Citibank is telling me, there is no beneficiary on this account. Like, what do you mean there's no beneficiary on this account? I have it in my hand, but
Right.
PS, there was no beneficiary on the account. So we always have to be checking these things.
Yes. Yes, on the account side too as well. Also, so basically, they have a financial account somewhere at the bank or brokerage,
Mhm.
ensuring all those pieces are. And is there a place for a checklist? So I know your book covers some of this as well, and you have a website, learnwithloriS.com. You're building a portal for there.
Mhm.
Is there a
Mhm.
place where one can find a checklist they can go through to kind of mitigate these issues?
I have what I've developed as a master directory, and it's a little booklet. It's actually very low tech. It's a physical little booklet where you can put down all of your accounts, your financial managers, your attorneys, your accountants, your passwords. Um, yeah, I'm not sure that's exactly what you're asking me, but
Hmm.
that did come to my mind. Um, is there a checklist? I mean, yeah, I mean, the basic stuff is your advance directives, your power of attorney, your healthcare proxy, your will, and better than your will, your trust.
Yes.
Um, I recently put a course together called Your Legal Checkup. And I go through in that course in the modules, I go through what the basics are that you need to think about and make sure that you have in place. Um, I like the idea of a little checklist though.
I did
Uh,
too. Yeah.
yeah, maybe,
The,
maybe I'll do one of those and put it up.
the simpler the better. Maybe even having like a quiz, perhaps, where people go through and to really rate themselves and where they're at as far as those
Yeah,
specifics. I know
yeah,
we
that's
probably
kind of what my course does.
God,
And
we probably have like a D minus in my wife and myself,
you know
probably.
what? You and most people,
Yeah.
it's not really something that I think from my experience that people spend a lot of time thinking about.
Yes.
And then you have those people who feel like they don't want to think about it at all because, you know, it's like the person who says, well, I don't want to do a will because then I'm probably going to die.
Yes. It,
You
it
know,
it it can be very challenging. One of my close, someone very, very close to me, their father passed away and their mother developed Lewy body dementia,
oh,
LBD.
mm-hmm,
And the mother's pretty young, relatively young, and LBD can be acquired in the 50s. So it's basically plaque in the brain, but it causes a person to be very delusional, almost to the point
mm-hmm.
that they're schizophrenic of sorts in terms of behavior.
Yeah, a lot of
And and
hallucinations.
and getting this person now to sign a power of attorney is an impossible thing. And this person also refuses to see physicians, doctors, and sometimes there are situations it's so important, as you mentioned, like get this done early in life while we have the mental capacity to make choices.
That's right.
And because these things happen. I lost 5 friends last year, and it could be an accident, and we don't want to think about these things, but certainly being proactive can be very beneficial because if we're not proactive, then it could affect our descendants. And I know one of my whys in life is generational impact, and it's really about my kids and their kids being taken care of. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes these things can take all it takes is like a 20-page document that's reviewed and optimized, checked off as a trust, and having that conversation so that things don't go to probate or um, hospitals don't go after resources that a family has
Right,
if
right.
if the system is available there to take care of it because we pay taxes as people, as Americans, as New Yorkers, and so forth.
Yeah, and guardianship. I mean, like your friend's mom, if something needs to be done for her, they'll probably end up in guardianship court. And that's really expensive. And you're subjecting yourself to needing the court's permission for every single move you make, including getting the assets out of her name. Um, you're running into court with a motion, everything you want to do. You're reporting to a court examiner every year. You're doing an accounting. You're doing a physical report of what's going on with mom. It's a burden. It's expensive. It's public. You have a lot of fingers in the pot, and all the fingers in the pot are getting paid out
Yes.
of out of mom's funds, by the
Yes.
way.
Yes.
And it's so inexpensive. I mean, it's all relative, right? But it's so inexpensive to do the basics. Even if all you do is a power of attorney, a healthcare
Right.
proxy, and a
Yes.
will, and not a will, forget a will, a power of attorney and a healthcare proxy. Someone can take care of things on your behalf when you have Lewy body and you just don't have the ability to understand anymore.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
it's so inexpensive compared to the alternative. And that's kind of part of my why. I want people to know that these things need to be taken care of while they are inexpensive. I mean, it's good for me when people, I mean, financially, it's good for
Yes.
me when people come with emergencies. It's good money, but every single person I feel sorry for, because if we had only talked a couple of years ago, but you didn't know to talk to me a couple of years ago.
Yes.
I mean, you meaning the person who comes with an emergency. They didn't even know that they should have these things in place. And that's the outreach part that I'm trying to get a handle on. And that's why I'm setting up this program where I'm offering whoops,
That's okay.
took my leg and kicked off my earphones. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're getting super excited. I mean,
I'm getting all excited.
you're passionate.
Right, right, right. I really want,
Mm,
I'm gonna be doing, I'm offering like a low yearly fee, and I'm asking people to come to a weekly group training session. And I want to go over a lot of these things
yes.
and then have, a Q&A at the end and just let people know what's out there, what you need to be thinking about. And you may not need to come to me. And if you're if you're not in New York, you won't come to me, and other than if you need me to help you find someone in another state. But I want people to at least have the ability to know what they need without, without being afraid that they're going to have to spend a fortune because they call up a lawyer. Um,
Yes, it can be very, very costly. I mean, it's like for me, it's going to the gym, right? And it's like an ounce of prevention goes a long way versus getting to that point where we're suffering, we're struggling because we didn't make those choices because of compound growth. Compound interest works different ways. It can work,
both ways, yeah.
yeah, it can work in a way where things are healthy, where we have a vital asset later on, or it can work another side if we don't take care of ourselves and make the right
Yeah,
choices. And this is not
yeah.
difficult. I'm happy. My dad, 5 years before he passed away, he had over 5 years before he passed away, he and my mom had the diligence to put together a trust. And then they also inspired my dad's many siblings to do the same thing too as well, also make that choice for their kids. And some of those siblings have gone forward, they've had heart attacks, they developed
Mm.
diabetes. My dad's one of 10.
Oh,
And
wow.
in New York and the US, I mean, the cost of healthcare is quite a bit. I mean, we're blessed to be living in this country, but the cost of healthcare is quite a bit. And it's just prevention is really invaluable. It's absolutely invaluable. And what you're
Mm-hmm,
doing is
mm-hmm,
prevention essentially.
mm-hmm. Yeah, basically take care of the basics. And then if something does happen, we're prepared
Yes.
and we can handle it. So I really, it upsets me. Well, I get a lot of calls too from people who have home health aides in place for mom or dad, and we have a managed care paradigm in New York, and it's not good. So a lot of people have a parent who's bed bound, and the managed care gives them 5 hours a day. Now, there are 19 other hours in the day
Mm.
that those people have needs. So they'll call me up and I'll do an appeal. And every single one of them, when I talk to them, it's like, gosh, I wish that I had heard from you when I could have gotten you the right care in place to begin with.
Yes.
Now you're paying me to do an appeal, which I'm happy to do. I love to do them because I like I say, I love beating the system at its own game to
Yes.
some extent because they really are cheating the seniors when
Yes.
it comes to care.
Absolutely.
So,
Yes, absolutely. I mean, if you hear things, situations, other states where people are decrepit, they're living in these homes and facilities where they're not moving, and they're sometimes their body parts are amputated because they're laying in bed,
hmm
with cold sores, and you hear about these situations that are just
hmm
horrific. And fortunately, we live in a good state for the most part that has a lot of accountability, and a lot of what I do in the work of entrepreneurship is about accountability, but bringing accountability into institutions, to hospitals, and to places of that sort. But not every situation, not every setting is the same. And there are other states also that just really have poor standards. And what's your advice? So if someone is outside of New York, let's say they're in the tri-state outside of New York, or like in New Jersey and so forth, or they're in another part of the country, what are some recommendations you have? Would they find somebody like yourself
Yeah,
in their
yeah,
community?
yeah, they should. Um, and this is not the norm, but I have seen people move their parent to New York to get to get home care in place. In fact, I'm working with someone right now who's in the process of doing that. because the home care that they need is not eligible through Medicaid in the state that they're in. And there's a 5-year look back period in most states for home
Right.
care. So they're bringing dad. I mean, the daughter lives in New York. She's bringing dad up here. Dad had a stroke. She's bringing him up here so that we can get really good home care in place without running through his life savings, private paying for it.
Wow.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's not the norm. Not everyone could bring their parent to New York. So, yeah, in other states especially, it's really important to kind of think about getting your assets situated ahead of time before you have the stroke. I mean, if we have the crystal ball, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yes. Exactly. Anything
so
can happen. Nothing. Tomorrow is never promised for anyone, any of us.
no, and that's the problem. When emergencies happen or a crisis happens, we don't get a warning.
Hmm.
We often don't get a warning. Like when COVID came along, you know, like I lost 4 friends in 1 month. And it's like, who expected that? None of these
Right.
people
Yeah.
necessarily had their ducks in a row.
Exactly. Exactly.
So,
My wife and I went on vacation a few months ago, and we didn't have our will managed, right? And like I'm getting older, but we're not getting younger, and we were with our kids. And the thing we did before we went is we emailed our siblings a copy of our will that we would eventually get notarized and so forth and in the system. But we emailed our siblings just so there's some sort of trackability that's there. And
good.
that's I mean it's a basic thing to do, but it's like basically forecasting the future, what could happen. And like we were concerned, like, well, what if the plane has an issue or something happens, or you're on a boat and I go scuba diving and like
Oh,
the things of that sort. So we're planning, and I'm grateful I'm married to somebody who's a brilliant physician, and she's quite a planner. But there are certain things you don't plan for in life, especially when you're young and healthy
that's right.
and so forth. But like I said, like anything can happen. Like
That's right.
I lost a friend of mine last year who I've hired to help me with measuring KPIs. 53 years old, healthy, beyond healthy on the outside. The one thing he wasn't tracking was his heart, and apparently he had arteriosclerosis, and that's what did him in on last year. And these things aren't planned for.
Yeah,
We never
I
know.
mean,
It could be
we
anything.
don't know.
It could be bike accident, it could be anything. And it's just making those choices, having the conversation. What's the easiest thing somebody can do? Like what's the simplest thing they can do to get this thing going?
Um, let's do a power of attorney and a healthcare proxy. And that's the other thing with the healthcare proxy. And I mean, you probably know this because your wife's a physician, but you want your person, the person you appoint, you want them to know what your wishes are.
Hmm.
Like, what if I am in a vegetative state with no hope of recovery? Do I want to be kept alive or do I want you to pull the plug? Different people have different feelings about that.
Yes.
So we
Yes.
want to do that. I mean, we want to make sure we have that in place because we don't want the hospital to have to go running into court so that a judge could appoint an independent guardian to decide. Um, so we want to do that. We want to have the power of attorney. Um, I mean, I think you want to have a will too.
Yes.
And
Yes.
a will, all that does is it allows you to say who gets what rather than the state's intestacy statute saying who gets what. But it's better than nothing,
Yes. Got
you
it.
know.
Got it.
So
We talked about these like worst case scenarios. Let's talk about these good case scenarios. So what's a good case scenario? What's that someone you've supported in the past that happened where maybe a travesty happened in their life, but they were prepared? What's like a really good case scenario that stands
well,
out?
yeah, that's the person who did a trust, who got the assets out of their name. Mom and dad got the assets into a family trust, an irrevocable. Well, when I say irrevocable, I really mean like a Medicaid asset protection trust. It's kind of a hybrid trust, but they did that. And, you know, when something did happen to dad, they knew what to do. And they were able to get Medicaid to pick up the nursing home bill.
Hmm.
Um, it's a huge bill. It's like the figure $18,000 a month
Yes.
for a nursing home bed.
Wow. Wow.
Um, and yes, it's a tragedy when something happens no matter what, but it's more of a tragedy when you potentially have your entire life savings at stake.
Yes. If you have to go bankrupt, that's a
Yeah,
huge tragedy. Yep.
yeah. And
Yep.
even if somebody did nothing, we can, assuming there's a power of attorney in place,
Hmm.
the proper power of attorney, we can still protect some of your assets. The rule of thumb that I use is roughly half of your assets by doing some fancy gifting and taking a penalty period and holding out some money for private pay, blah blah blah. We can usually protect half of your assets, but is that what you want your kids to be left with, is half of your assets when you're gone, or do you want everything to go to them or to your charities or to whoever you want to benefit with your life's work?
Yes. And that's
So
generation. That's generational too.
that's
So
right. That's
that's
right.
important. That's important. It's important. Most people, most of my clients, they focus on generationally, really, especially if they have kids, right? And
That's right.
grandkids. It's making sure that the future generations are taken care of.
That's right. Who
Uh,
knows what the world is going to be like for them? I mean,
exactly.
we
Exactly.
hope it'll be better, but
Exactly. Exactly. So how do people connect with you? So of course, there's NY Elder Law Group, and they can access your book. And the book is called A Guide to Medicaid Home Care in New York. Is that correct?
right. And how to beat the system at its own game and get the care that you or your loved one needs. And I go through I go through kind of what the Medicaid home care process in New York looks like. It's daunting.
Hmm.
It's really way too many moving parts. So I kind of go through some of my strategies and approaches because a lot of my clients have round the clock care. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what we get them right from the get-go, assuming that they need it and that their needs justify it. So I kind of go through how we strategize to get there and then how we can appeal if somebody doesn't have the right care in place.
Yeah.
So it's, it's it's kind of written so that if you want to try it yourself, you can. But as a practical matter, um,
It helps to
it's
have
not
somebody.
yet.
Helps
Self-help doesn't really work
it
right
helps
now.
it helps to have a fiduciary. It helps to have somebody who knows, who can navigate with you.
Yeah,
It's really vital
yeah,
like you are to me. Yeah.
it's so not doable. It's just you can't get the good result if you're doing it like DIY these
Yes.
days. Back in the day you could, but now it's become a little daunting. But at
Okay.
least it lets you know what you can expect as you're going through the process. That was kind of my intention in writing it. Because
Great.
even when you have this conversation with the clients and you are the one helping them, it's still confusing
Could you hold the
to
book up?
them.
I think you have it in your hands. So
Oh
it's
yeah, yeah,
a
yeah.
guy.
Sure.
Amazing. It's called A Guide to Medicaid Home Care in New York. You can also get it on Amazon too, as well as on Lori's website, nyelderlawgroup.com.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And you mentioned too, you've got another service too. So you're putting together like a weekly or monthly program where you can educate people like on the gym. Let's learn with LoriS.com, right?
LearnwithloriS.com. Yeah, that's the program where I'm charging people like a $500 fee, and you can
For the year, right?
for the
It's
year. Yeah,
for the year.
you can
Wow,
enroll
that's a steal.
all of your family. Yeah, it is all of your family members, and you can jump on to my educational group training every week. Um, Maybe the subject will be interesting to you, maybe it won't, but some of them definitely will.
Hmm,
And you can ask me questions, and I'm setting up a text line so you can text your questions to us.
that's amazing.
Um, just to just so you know what you need,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
and it's not even, it's not even like when attorneys do seminars to kind of generate business. I mean, yeah, it might generate business if you need help and we can help you, good,
Right.
but it's kind of more of my passion project to get
Yes.
information out there, and especially to seniors. it's really, it makes me sad that people don't know what they're able to get, what they're entitled to. People call me up and saying, tell me, okay, we're going to sell mom's house so we can pay for her care. Well, let's not do that. Let's
Mm.
not have that be our first step,
Right. And that'll go
you
very
know?
quickly, 18,000 per month. That'll add up very,
Right.
very, very quickly.
Right.
Right.
Right. I mean, we have alternatives, but people don't necessarily know that.
Yeah.
And especially with Medicaid, because everyone knows Medicaid is a means tested program. So the first thing I'll hear from most people is, oh no, dad has too much money. We know that.
Yeah.
We're here to take care of that.
Yes.
Um,
I,
you know,
I, I've got cousin, and when she was 11 years old, 11, 12 years old, she developed pneumonia. And it was potentially maybe cause a mold in the house or so forth. And then it got to a point where she has a fraction of the lung she had before because much of her lung
oh
was
wow.
removed.
Oh
And she
wow.
almost died many, many, many times, like over the years. And
Oh.
fortunately, because of Medicaid and support, they're able to get the support. So, I mean, it can happen any age, right? But of course,
Right.
what we're often present to is basically later in life. It can happen any age, and it just make taking the right efforts to prevent for prevention. And $500 for a year, right? Access to you and your hotline and the videos is priceless. It's absolutely
Right.
priceless. It's
And
really, really
I'm also going to credit that if they do some work with us, like a power of attorney or a will or whatever, I'm going to credit that $500 to the work. So it's potentially free.
yes. Oh,
Um,
amazing. That's
so
absolutely amazing.
I
Yes,
I want people to take advantage of it.
that's amazing. I mean, what does a power of attorney cost? Curiously, is that
Um,
about?
the everyone charges what they charge. I charge 750 for a power of attorney for the comprehensive one that has the gifting authority and that really goes through, like, it's a long document, but um
Amazing. That and that that's
so
that's nothing. I mean, we paid so much for our trust like 30
well,
years
yeah,
ago, the
the
family
trusts for
did.
more, yeah.
Yes, yes. And that's a whole other thing as well also. And
Right.
those need to be
And
reviewed, and we'll be reviewing ours with you as well also soon. It's just so vital. It really is. The
yeah, and I
basic,
usually do it as a package. Like if you're doing a trust package, we're going to do the trust, we're going to do the power of attorney, the healthcare proxy, a pour over will. So I try to package
yes,
the stuff so that you kind of get the stuff that you need and don't just pick and choose because
yes.
of price.
So anyone listening to this, please, I mean, from my experience having elderly parents and a dad who passed away and having gone through this, and I have so many of my clients who gave up their careers so they can stay home and take care of their parents. And
Yeah.
because they weren't able to afford systems because of mistakes were made or so forth, they went bankrupt of sorts, and they've had to give up their mission. In some cases, it's affected their relationships, their marriages, and it's just basically the alternative is simply seeing a professional, having a few signatures, and ensuring that your taxes that you've been paying for many years are put into good use, taking care of your loved ones. And this could be any age. It could be somebody in their teens, or it could be somebody who's much older. And of course, this happens in most cases when people are significantly older, but can happen any age. And it's just going to the gym. And I'd say probably like the Lori gym. That's what I'd probably call it, or the elder law gym, essentially, and making and just doing the basic things now versus waiting till later. So NY Elder Law Group to access Lori and her brilliant, nyelderlawgroup.com if you live in New York. If you're outside of New York, I'm sure Lori has a resource. There may be a resource in your community, your state, your country where you live in. Learn with LoriS.com for more on her um, uh, training, her video program that she's offering. Lori, curiously, it's one of the last questions I'll ask you is if you could offer advice to someone who just became an adult, someone who's 18, 19, 20, or perhaps even a younger version of yourself, perhaps, knowing what you know now, what's one thing you would offer that person?
When I look back and say, gosh, I wish I had done things this way, um, I would have I would have done I would have done life planning. I would have set out goals for every aspect of my life and gone to work on achieving them, including saving for retirement, um, things I wanted to learn. Uh, you know, I'm I like I like to be very structured and goal oriented, but that was not how I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
I would have gotten to work on taking care of business at a younger age, and I think that would give more freedom in your older ages or midlife, where you've kind of been working toward goals your whole life. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I would tell my 18-year-old self, like buckle down and really make a plan.
Amazing. Great advice. And what I'm aware of again is a compound growth. Like each thing you invest into pays dividends, not just our finances. Of course, you put money into an account, the Roth IRA, and 20, 30 years, you've got millions, right,
Hmm.
waiting. But
Hmm.
that applies to all areas of life too, as well. So it's something we hear quite a bit as well. And Einstein even says too that it's the number one rule in the universe. I think he says something of that sort. This has been a privilege. This has been especially amazing. I'll make sure this is out to our audience. And for all of you out there, access the recording of this at rulesforsuccess.com. There's a mind map, Lori's contact, links to her websites, nyelderlawgroup.com, as well as learnwithlorries.com. And Lori's name is spelled Lorisomekh is her last name. You could find her easily there. And she's been a good friend. It's good to have someone on your side like Lori, as she has been for me over the past few years, supporting me, encouraging me on my mission around creating generational impact. So thank you all for listening. Thank you, Lori, again, and let's go rock it. Have an
Thank you
amazing
so
day.
much. Thank you so much, Joseph.